Nelson County Board of Education to order on January 10th, 2023 at approximately 5:30 p.m. First off, if you would, please join Josie Rogers and Patrick Mildy as they lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So moving on into item number 2 on the board agenda, the annual board planning process, meeting goes. So Superintendent Bradley, if you'd like to lead us on that item.
Yeah, so every 2 years, we are able to, well, every year we determine the organization of the board during our first meeting of the year. Tonight, we'll also be able to, I guess you could say, induct 2 new members of the board. As part of that organizational structure. We also want to be able to learn a little bit about not only the new board members, but our board team as we start this new school year, or this new planning year. We also will be looking at some facility funding scenarios. As everyone knows, we've been looking a lot at facility planning over the last 20 months, and tonight continues some of those conversations. Additionally, we'll end the conversation looking at some of the most recent teacher needs assessment data that allows us to start talking about budgetary priorities in the coming months.
Thank you, Superintendent Bradley. Moving on into item 3A, did we have any sign-ups for guest speakers?
We did. They got it.
There was a list out there, there was 2 names on it.
So guest comments. So the guest comment policy of the board. Thank you for attending our Nelson County School Board meeting. Any person wishing to address the board may do so by following these rules. Individuals representing themselves are limited to 3 minutes. Individuals representing a group are limited to 5 minutes. We'd ask that you please step forward, state your name and address, and if you represent a group, state the name of the group you are representing. First person who had signed up, it looks to be Sarah Bunch, I believe is the name.
Yes. So I'm Sarah Bunch, I live in Bardstown. I'm speaking for myself. First off, Happy New Year. Hope everybody had great holidays. New Year's is always a time where everybody makes resolutions to what they want to change for the new year. And I think tonight will be a good start for Nelson County Schools, especially with 2 new fresh faces on the board. For this year, I would like to see personally, and other parents as well, more focus on academics, which I believe is the reason why many in District 1 and District 4 voted for David and Amanda, is because they really want to see this district focus on academics. Experiences are great, but life is going to bring that to them. We need to focus on academics. Fundamentals. Just like if you're an NBA player or playing for a professional sports team, if you don't have fundamentals, you're not going to succeed at those higher levels, just like anything in life. So I would like to see the board ask for comparisons of testing scores with the grading scale and what constitutes the grading scale and success for the district. And it's hard for me to explain it. The only way I know how to explain it is, for example, state testing scores, we did poorly. MAT testing scores, or I'm sorry, iReady scores, for example, with my child, coincided with the state level. He's not reading at his grade level. Now, he's not the best reader. I will put that right out there on the table. But at the same time, in his reading and his ELA, he's getting A's. So that's confusing for parents. They don't know, why is my kid making an A, but they're not reading at grade level? Why are they performing poorly in math, but they're getting an A? That's misleading, and I feel like the board needs to ask the district administration for clarification of that and how those scores relate. For example, with the new community campus, we're promoting advanced courses and more opportunity for academic advancement. But why are we investing the time and the money for that if none of our students are meeting the state level? That just seems like a waste of time. Why not focus on getting our kids back where they need to be? Then we can focus on advancing those courses. I'd also like to see improved teacher input in the district being more open to taking teacher input and improving that relationship, because I feel like it's been strained for quite some time. Finally, through the course of coming to the meetings, we've switched to guest comments from the end of the meeting to the beginning. I would like to see you guys include a time in the agenda to address those, or at least discuss those. And whether no action can be taken, that's fine, but at least discuss those and make it just not feel like a sounding board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next signed up is, I believe it's Joseph Larry Mattingly.
Yes, hello everyone. Good evening. Joseph Larry Mattingly, I live in New Haven, Kentucky. I'm here tonight to just say what a wonderful thing this is in return for what we've been through the last year, backwards and forwards, of what some want, what we want, what they want, what we want. It's come down to the governing process that we have in the United States, the vote and all, and now tonight we're going to see a wonderful thing, which was wonderful last, when you swear in anybody to do public work and serve the people. And we've got two new ones tonight through the election process. Is a wonderful thing. The flag, we said, pledge allegiance to the flag right there with us. And it's a happy occasion tonight. I'm just tickled to death with everything. And what a pleasure is going to turn out to be. We all put our input in the right way, very understanding, peacefully, not mad at one another, but we're going to achieve goals. We're going to continue to do that. And the board, I hope that they realize they're the governing part of the school system, and that's why you're elected. And again, this is a happy occasion and a glorious occasion. The system is still working, and that's a great contribution to everyone, whatever age you are. It's going to work, and we're going to do it and be proud of one another, all of us, our school teachers, our faculty, our citizens, our children, and everybody's going to benefit. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. And David Greenwell.
Daniel Greenwell, 272 Indian Hills Road, New Haven. Just wanted to come here and make it short and sweet this time. Want to reiterate, first speaker, dead on, about the grades, about the scores. Everything she had to say there really needs to be addressed. Podium up here, guys, be real nice. There's something we can put some paper on, we can organize a little better on our thoughts. Want to congratulate Amanda Deaton, David Norman. Thank you for standing up in a tumultuous time. I know it was a hard-fought campaign. Well, not too hard-fought, I don't look like, but anyway, thanks for standing up and doing what you've done. Glad I'm not in y'all's seats, but I'm glad you are there. So looking forward to a new board. Looking forward to hopefully actual conversations and not just being told what is going to happen and what's going to be done. So looking forward to actual conversations, looking forward to new ideas and hopefully a new direction for the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we get to the good part. Moving on into item 4, oath of office. We've got Board Attorney Eric Ferris here, who is going to administer the oath of office to the two new school board members. One at a time or both at the same time? Or?
I'm happy to do both at one time unless you all would like to have family.
It's your all's turn as new board member. Okay.
I'm good knocking it out.
We can be efficient and do it all.
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, no, definitely. On the slide aside, I'm not stepping aside. I'm sliding the chair.
Let me get these in place here. Make sure I've got the right.
We've got it, if you take it off the slide, you have it.
All right. Congratulations, Mr. Norman and Stephen. And it's my pleasure to issue to you the 2 oaths of office that are required by the Constitution and by the statute. So if you will both raise your right hands, and I will read each oath, and at the end ask you to say, "I do." Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, so long as you continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully execute to the best of your ability the office of member of the Board of Education of Nelson County according to law, and do you further solemnly swear or affirm that since the adoption of the present Constitution, you, being a citizen of the state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within the state, nor out of it, nor have you sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have you acted as a second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help you God.
I did.
Very good. All right, and the oath pursuant to KRS 16170. Do each of you, first being duly sworn, state that you are eligible under the law to serve as a member of the Board of Education of Nelson County, and that you will not, while serving as a member of such board, become interested directly or indirectly in any contract with or claim against the board, and that you will not in any way influence the hiring or appointment of district employees except the firing of the superintendent of the schools or school board attorney.
I did.
Very good. Congratulations. I will ask each of you, when you can, before the evening is out, to sign the constitutional oath, and then I will acknowledge both of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ferris.
Has to be in blood, too, Jerome.
So make sure, and I don't know, Mariah, maybe at the end, if there needs to be a more formal picture,
Yeah.
individual pictures or whatever.
We'll take care of it, yeah.
You'll take care of it. Okay, good deal. Thank you. So, the board is back up to full strength now, 5 members. So moving on to item 5A, election of a chairperson. So each January, the Nelson County Board of Education elects a new chairperson for the calendar year. Traditionally, this office has rotated among the board members to avoid placing an undue burden on any one member. At one time, we called it moving the chairs, because literally we just slid one chair over to the right. So at this time, I would like to accept nominations for a chairperson.
I will nominate Ms. Diane Berry for chairperson.
So there is a nomination by Ms. Bowling for Ms. Berry as chairperson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Norman. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Now it's yours.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Here we go. Okay, our next item on the agenda is our election of a vice chairperson. I would like to nominate, I can do that, can't I?
You
I can do
can.
that. I'd like to nominate Tracy Bowling as our vice chair.
I'll
Do I hear a
second.
second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Jackie. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations.
Almost a nay on that one.
No. Oh, no. Okay. Our next election would be of the secretary to serve as on our board chair. Do I have a motion for secretary?
Make a motion to recommend appointing Superintendent Bradley as Secretary of the Nelson County Board of Education.
Okay.
And I will second that.
Okay, motion was made by Mr. Jackie to elect our superintendent, Wes Bradley, for secretary of our board chair, of the board. And I have a second by Tracy Bowling. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations. Okay. Next, for item 6, we're going to unite people, place, and purpose. And that would be Superintendent Bradley.
So each year in January is not only is it Board Appreciation Month, but it also allows us some time just to revisit kind of our why. And one of the conversations we continue to have in Nelson County Schools is about the people and places in our life that really offer the unique gifts that allowed us to be here today. Each of us have a unique journey, and it's important that we continue to think about that journey. I think in the spirit of the room, it makes sense that we have these conversations, I think, in context of a small group in this room. Here are the important rules to this conversation, though. Is you have to find 2 people that you know the least in the room. That means that if you don't know, and let me explain the importance of this, because I saw someone shaking their head. So the importance of this is really that you're getting, if we think about community, that you're getting to know people that you likely don't know. Think about Joe, Larry's conversation about bringing people together. You think about Ms. Bunch's conversation. That's really the point, is allowing people to connect and hear about some of the people and places that have impacted their life. There's got to be at least 1 or 2 people in this room you don't know, you've never talked to before. So it's really just going to be about a 5-minute conversation. It also allows the board to come back and kind of synthesize as we think about our why. Ultimately, we want board members to be able to talk about their why. We also want to engage in conversation with people in the audience around that. This is no decision-making process, informational only, for the record. So we'll set the timer for 5 minutes and encourage you to find 1 or 2 people. The goal is to talk about people and places that have impacted your journey and really your why as a community member.
Okay, continue on, Superintendent Bradley.
Well, I think just as we synthesize this conversation, just allowing board members, as we think about our why, you want to acknowledge people and places you can, but really, you should think about starting off at least what looks like 15 scheduled meetings, I think, at this point in time. Just providing some space to talk about that. You want to start us off, Dan? I know you love this conversation.
What am I going to say? What do you, why I'm on the board?
So just your why, right? So your purpose, how you know, why you're here in this role.
Why I'm here. That's not fair, people. I am here because I want to see the students of Nelson County get the very best education that we can afford and that we can make happen. To me, that's as simple as it needs to be. And whatever we can do to make it happen, that's what we need to do. Thank you. Tracy?
Well, my why changed a little bit, to be honest. 2 years ago, I guess almost 2, maybe 3, going on 3. My why of being part of the board anyway was because it was going to be a vacant seat. And I had always been involved with my kids' education and being part of, just being in the school community itself. So I thought, well, it's just the next best thing, you know, done PTA, did site-based, and now I'm gonna do this. And while my vision has always been about what's best for the students in Nelson County, it really had to grow, and it wasn't just the best that I could do for Boston kids. It was the best that we could do for every kid in Nelson County. I mean, every kid, not just the top percent, not just the bottom percent, but every student. And I think over the last 2 years especially, I have really become more in tune with what that means. And I think that's, my why has sort of changed. It's not just about making sure that my kids have a great time when they get to school, but it's about the environment that they're growing up in. It's about creating the next generation of Nelson County people and making sure that they find success inside our school building so that they find success outside the school building as well.
Amanda?
Well, it's hard to improve upon what Diane said. You know, I have children in the district. I went to Los Angeles County Schools, and I love our schools. I did. I had some great teachers, Dan Bradley, people that taught me I could write and taught me that I could speak, and it really changed a career path for me. And so, but mostly, I just see so much potential, and we're not realizing it. But we've got these parents and these teachers, and I just think it can be better. And I think I can be an instrument for that, along with the other members of this board, and that's what made me want to be a part of it, so.
Thank you.
Me? So I'll start by going, Mallory, do you remember how many years I said I've been in public education?
30?
Yeah, a little bit low.
So.
My comment was about 47 years, and that counts all the way back to first grade. And 30 of that, though, has been in truly working in public education. I'll call it a CARA baby. I started teaching at the very beginning of CARA, the Kentucky Education Reform Act, and was that approach to really change how education in Kentucky occurred. There was always this running joke that, well, thank God for Arkansas, or thank God for Mississippi, because Kentucky always seemed to be number 49 in any list of the 50 states. And we've made a lot of improvements and advancements over the past 30-plus years of the Education Reform Act. And I'm a product of public schools. My parents' product of public schools. Both of my kids, graduates of Nelson County High School. And, you get to this point, I think, in your life where you start saying, what more can I do to maybe make my community be a better place? And you start trying to figure out, really, where can you make the biggest impact? And I've always thought education, there is nothing that has a larger economic impact on a community than the investment that we make in public schools. And so that's kind of where I found my why, was let's try and make the biggest positive impact we can on a community, and that is through public education. And we're lucky here in Nelson County. We have 3 good school systems. We've got the Nelson County school system that we're all here as advocates for. We've got the Bardstown City Schools, if that's a choice that a family wants to make. And we've got great parochial, the private school system as well. And, it's just, I think all of us here, we advocate for the Nelson County schools and how we can make it better for those students that choose us as the school they want to attend. So it's 47 now.
Thank you. Mr. Norman?
Thank you, Diane. Well, I'm a little nervous tonight about teaching church with you, but my journey started out about 8 years ago. I advocated for my son who had autism. And it really taught me a lot. He has. We still struggle, and we struggle today. But and I just want to make sure all the children are taken care of, and giving a voice and making sure that kids on all parts of Nelson County are given the same opportunities. And I just come from New Haven School and heard a lot of good things. Sat with a staff meeting and sat with KDE and heard some good things going on down there. So got some relief from that. But I've been concerned about it. And that's my main project right now that I'm concerned about, not because I represent those people, because I knock on their doors and they tell me that they're concerned, but I'm concerned with New Haven. I think they could really prosper. I think we can. Those children down there are some great children, some really good kids, and great staff down there. You just gotta support them and get them what the equipment they need. And I want every child, it's getting those children out of those situations that will lead them down the wrong roads and get them on the right path, be successful humans. So that's why I'm here as a board member. But thank you all for coming tonight. Really appreciate you all supporting me. And feel good. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Long. Okay, our next part of our agenda will be the next strategic planning, which includes a facility funding discussion. That would be our superintendent, Mr. Bradley.
Someone can pass out these pamphlets to everybody in the room, so you have really a summary of the data. The board already has access to this information. It's also on the slide deck. It's essentially the same thing I passed out to you guys over the last couple of weeks. In here, you'll find all financial information as of today regarding facility planning in Nelson County Schools, as it looks backwards 20 years and forwards 20 years, because it is really the way it works out is it's a 20-year process. So if you don't want one of these, don't take them. If you do, feel free to use that. I think I would encourage you to just, as we engage in the conversation, as a board, that you take into context a lot of data in here, and some of it means things that are kind of complex in the way it's all framed. So.
I didn't bring mine. I don't know how to do it. Just did it.
So, obviously, we've been having a 20-month conversation about facilities, and at the end of the day, if you think about decision-making, money matters. It matters a lot. And I just want to reiterate, some of you guys have been out, some of you I've seen more than my mother in the last year in this room. It's a true story. She lives in Florida, Minnesota. Deborah, absolutely seen you more than my brother and my mother. So, with that said, some of you have seen this before, pieces of it, but you've not seen all of this information. I think just a reminder, why does the state of Kentucky provide this access legislatively? So there's a regulation that says facility money should be spent upon facilities to improve the long-term financial efficiency of the district, to improve student opportunities and learning opportunities for students across that district, to ensure the quality and conditions of buildings are up to par based on those standards, and really looking at where people live, where kids are going to school, and where kids are taking buses from. Like that's generically a summary of how facility, from the state standpoint, that's how they look at it. From a Nelson County School standpoint, we look at it in a lot of ways, not just those ways. We're also thinking about the impact on human resources, access to programs, and in terms of teachers, where teachers are and are not, what type of enrollment patterns we have now and into the future. All those things are embedded in here. Many of you have heard a lot of these things. We started this conversation off 20 months ago with this question: what's the future demand of our schools? That picture right there is from 1969. I think it was about May of '69. Diane knows like 80% of the people in this picture. She can tell you who they are. These people were about to transition at that time to Nelson County High School from Mild Kentucky Home High School. That was in the spring before the transition in '69 to the opening of Nelson County High School. That was 54 years ago.
It's not my Old Kentucky Home, it's Old Kentucky Home High School.
I think it's
for me, I feel like it's always been my own, and I just hate to let up on that mine.
Sounds like an old folks home.
It is a great name. It's a great name. So the other reality is we're sitting here, it's 2023. Our reality is very different than the reality 100 years ago. At the turn of the 20th century, we had 80 schools in Nelson County. And of those schools, they were completely segregated. 63 of those schools were all white, 17 were all black. Since then, there's been serious social, technological change as we think about the realities of economies. There's been multiple things occurred during that time period. There's been pandemics, etc. The last 50 years in Nelson County schools really sets us up for where we are today. And 30 years ago, we pretty much started a facility planning process because the Kentucky Education Reform Act said you now have a funding mechanism for facilities. It's the first time it happened. It was in 1990, 1991. That's where the money started to accrue in the sheet that you have in front of you. 1991 was the original nickel that started this funding pattern. At the end of the day, we said we wanted to, the future of our school system demanded that we were able to better unite people together, unite feeder patterns together, unite access and opportunity for those kids through increased academic course offerings. We wanted to be able to offer, especially for high school students, earlier access to college and career. We wanted to increase athletic and student leadership offerings. That's what we said 20 months ago. We said we wanted to increase connections and optimize resources for flexibility and sharing with our community and make sure we were working smarter financially. Those are the things we said 20 months ago, and we're still saying today. So let's talk about the money. This facility financials, it basically says where the money comes from. When we pay taxes right now, for every $100,000 of property that you own, you're paying $168 that goes into the facility fund of Nelson County Schools. That's a lot of money. $168, $100,000. If you own $1 million, that's $1,680 just going to the facility fund. That's legislatively mandated. I think I saw Ms. Masseroni here earlier. That's legislatively mandated. Currently, the board can do nothing about that. Can't change it. The facility tax rate is fixed. We can't alter it. Those were decisions made by boards 20 years ago. These realities is that we can't spend this money on anything else. The banks and the construction lobbyists will never let us spend it on anything else. So over the next 20 years, Nelson County Schools, if all things stay relatively similar legislatively, will generate between $150 and $250 million for facility funding. That could change, but that's what it says today based on the current trends over the last 20 years. So this is the sheet everybody has in front of them that says, how do we get $150 to $250 million? Well, this page right here explains how that happens. It says you're going to have $164 million generated over the next 20 years, even if we have 1.5% property assessment growth, which would be the lowest conservative estimate that any trend maker would probably provide us. On the high end, if you look at what we've done the last 5 years at 6.1%, we would generate $270 million. Here's why this model is a little bit broken. The board cannot control this currently. It's uncontrollable. Next year, property values in Nelson County are supposed to go up $270 million according to estimates from KDE. That'll move us to about 7.2 million, which is above 6.1% in 1 year. That may or may not happen. That's the current projection. And again, that is the current legislative structure. Do we see this changing? We don't. Who are the people that are behind much of this legislation to begin with? Well, people that are thinking about the schools, construction. People that are thinking about the future of how do we build infrastructure in schools. These offer opportunities to create sustainable public schools. But these are the methods that we use. So when we say 150 to 250 million, this is where it comes from. Right now, in Nelson County Schools, if we said how much money could we spend, could the board choose to spend today, it's probably around $50 million. If you chose to, you could spend about that much money. That's in the
the process. In theory, if you wanted to put money for the next 7 years towards the general fund, you could increase that money on the right side there. It's not something that's recommended, but it's an option that does exist. If you look at this over the course of the next few years, those numbers are very conservative. In fact, I would argue next year's increased property values will probably push these numbers right away closer to $60 million. Again, these are just bonding capacity estimates. So this is the current projects that we still are paying on to this day. Bloomfield Elementary School is in its last payment this year. Okay, that was 20 years ago. Bloomfield Elementary School was built, still paying that off. Boston School Phase 2, still paying that off. Nelson County High School Athletics and the academy that is right next door is still being paid off. All total, there's $44.4 million that are to be paid off over the next 20 years. So debt is obviously from all, if you live in America and you grew up in Nelson County, you know that debt is bad, right? Debt is a bad thing, no one wants debt. Our reality is, we've been fortunate in Nelson County schools. We have right now the lowest debt to revenue ratio in the entire region. I took off all the names of these schools. If you want to figure out which schools are matched to which, I'm not going to give you that information, but these are all of the schools in the region that compare to us. And I'm just not sharing. I can give you some content. I can show you how to find the information. I just didn't want to tell you everybody else's bonding capacity to tell what their debt is. But this is every single school in our region and their debt. Right now, as you see, we have $44 million. And that's $10,700 a student. That sounds like an outrageous amount of money. It's the lowest in the region because we have so much revenue coming in. Next year, our debt to revenue ratio will be even lower because the revenue is going up so fast and we can't stop it from going up. So these are all things to consider. I think the other reality is, did I not have the current cost of construction? Let's get that one. Huh. So the current cost of construction, as we think about this reality, all the projects we're currently working on, we just got a bid for Thomas Nelson High School. It was $26 million for the entire project. That was the total project cost. Construction costs, I think, were 24 point something. Total project cost was $26 million. That is for a middle school addition. New Haven School is currently projected at $14 million at total project cost. That doesn't mean that's what it is. That's the total project cost projected. All right, so there's $40 million. The transportation garage, building that $3 million projected cost. And I have a slide that disappeared. So, additionally, we have the Up Center. The Up Center currently is funded through a state grant that's $10 million. That, in theory, doesn't cost us locally anything unless we want to add on to it. The board could choose to add on to that. Cox's Creek School, a complete modernization of that school. It's half the price of New Haven because there's not near as much work to be done at Cox's Creek. It's approximately $7 million. So, lastly, Nelson County High School wing, the expanded wing for the high school. The projected construction cost is $35 million. That would all be up here. Those numbers add up to just over $80 million. I think I covered all the projects. So those add up to just over $80 million. I share that just as a kickoff to the conversation to allow us to understand that's where we currently are. Originally, we were projecting those numbers to be closer to $55 to $60 million. Obviously, those numbers are higher by 30% or more than we originally projected. So, with that said, the question really, as we think about today, is what does the future demand of our schools? And we're not looking to get answers in so much as we're allowing the board a conversation to start about what does the future demand of our schools as we think about facilities. Next conversation right after this, Ms. Newton and Ms. Henderson are going to lead a conversation really around academic needs, teacher needs assessment. Obviously, academically is a big part of this conversation. In fact, if you think about what does facility planning do, it impacts teacher professional growth. It impacts student opportunities. It impacts human resource access. We see that very clearly right now in our smallest schools, especially in our middle schools where you have to have specialized teachers. It impacts academic achievement. And it impacts it in a number of different ways as we look at it over time. It also impacts financial efficiency. These are all things we as a board will be talking about in conversation throughout this year. So I share this as a reference point and really a vehicle to allow the board to talk about facility planning, because over the next couple of months, we'll have an opportunity to either make decisions or not make decisions. And this allows you guys and the public information to know that this is our current financial reality. Here was our original goals. How might these be shifting? How might these continue to be a part of our conversation? So really the goal of this is allowing board members financial information to talk about this question here in the context of facility financial planning.
Any thoughts? No? I got a thought. You see those students walking up the steps at Old Kentucky Home? And I'm sorry, but when I was in school, we were just darn lucky that we had teachers that would come to school at 7 o'clock in the morning and not leave until 5 and 6 o'clock at night. And we don't have that now. And I'm sorry we don't. We do have some, but not like it was when I was in school. And I know I'm old, and I admit it, I don't care. When I went to school, it just seemed like there was teachers that taught more than just the subject. They taught you to be a good citizen. They taught you to be a good person. And I think we like that too in schools. I really do. I think some of our kids, this is emotional for me because, you know, this is all I've ever known is Nelson County schools. This is where I raised my children, and I want to be proud of us. And right now, I don't think I'm proud as much as I thought I would be at this stage of our education priorities in here. Because I feel like some of my kids, and I call them my kids because a lot of them I know their parents, their grandparents, and a lot of my kids are not getting the education that I feel that they deserve. And that starts in elementary. When my kids cannot read at third grade level in the third grade, we have a problem. And I want that stopped. Because to me, if you can't read, you can't do anything. You can't be the plumber. You can't be the electrician. You cannot be anything if you cannot read. And we've got kids that can't read. And I don't understand why. I'm sorry I'm on a rant here, but I don't understand why. Because why are we putting them ahead in the 4th and 5th grade if they can't read? Well, I don't understand that. I guess because my kids were taught in a different way. They had levels. And if you couldn't read this level, you didn't get to go to this level. And you can date my age, I don't care. I'm over 65. I tell my kids I can say what I want. And when they get to middle school, okay, when my kids were younger, I'm sorry, that's all I have to go by. My kids could be in advanced math, in advanced, in advanced classes, and they're not now because we're too scattered. And the only way to work is to work together to find a reason how we can make it work better. You know, we've got to do it. Whether you like the thought of joining schools, whether you don't like the thought of joining schools, we've got to do it for the kids, not for us. You know, everybody's had a broken heart over dividing our school years ago. Sure, that happened. But we've got the opportunity to do something great for our kids now. You know, and they deserve it. So that's my rant. That's how I feel. And if that means doing things that all of us don't like, that's just too bad. I don't even know any other way to put it. We're doing it for kids, not for us. That's it. I quit. Somebody else now.
What was that?
Diane,
Go ahead.
I've got a son that's autistic, and I hate to keep bringing him up, but he's talking so much and tries me every day. But a great teacher by the name of Lee Johnson, Caroline Greer, and I'm sorry I can't remember all of them, but they give my son the power of learning by giving him the power to read, write, and I feel blessed by that. We need to not really glorify our teachers. We don't need to. We need to cherish them. We need to let them know we care about them. And you know, I've got so many thoughts going through my head right now. I don't want to unleash, and I just want to take my time and learn. It's been 5 years since I've been on this board, and got a lot of issues. I just want to hear what the community is saying, what they want. And I know I come from a different area than anyone out in this room, and that's good, because that's what I bring to the board. I care about kids as my main thing. I know the struggles these kids are going through at New Haven and all over across the, and it's all over the United States. Other kids are not given the opportunity because they don't have good homes, and it's just, and that's why Joanne is trying to help them keep those kids. But we've got some big decisions to make here soon. But we need to kind of slow it down and see what we got, and make sure we don't make another mistake. You know, I don't want to say mistake, but I don't want to make a mistake. That's why I'm so thought out. But thank you all. I'm done.
Thank you.
I'm going to say real quickly, I've witnessed the teachers stay until 7 o'clock. I mean, I've seen both of these guys here, Ms. Newton, Mr. Peak, leaving way later than anybody else in these buildings. So I know we have the people in our buildings. I know they're in there, and I know they're working hard, and they're taking care of the kids that Mr. Norman's talking about. That if it wasn't for them, nobody would be taking care of them. And I agree with him too. We do need to praise them more, and we do need to make sure that they have the resources that they have. And it is going to take a lot of thought and a lot of energy and a lot of conversation to do that and make sure that we do it right. And I agree 100%. My question is why are we having that conversation now? If our kids have been behind all this time, why are we just now starting this conversation?
We definitely need more talk about academics in these meetings. I said a lot. I want to get more talk about the academics. I know the structures and athletics is important. I know that's all hand in hand, but we got to start talking about more about academics. I'm sorry, but that's what I want to talk about.
Well, don't be sorry.
No,
Don't
I'm
be
sorry.
sorry.
I'm not sorry.
I think the reason why we don't know is because we've never been shown. If you don't have a student in school, if you don't have a little one in school, you don't know what they're doing. Unless you've got one in school and they come home and they're going, huh, I can't read that. Oh, why can't you read it? That's the reason why I don't know it, because I don't have anybody in school anymore.
I do. I do have kids in school.
Well, I'm
And
saying though, but your child can probably read 3rd grade level.
it's, again, this isn't just a board dilemma. This is a
No, it's
community,
everybody's.
this is everybody sharing in this responsibility. And I hate to tell you,
Yeah.
but guess what?
I don't know.
Not everybody wants to share in that responsibility.
Well, no, you're not telling me nothing I don't know.
So we have to depend on the people in our buildings, and we have to make sure that they have the resources available, because they may be the only person that cares.
Yeah, I'm correct.
Well, and I'm just encouraged that we're sitting here talking about it, because I've been coming to board meetings for longer than I wish I could say that I have been, and we've not been talking about it. I mean, if it's not good, pretending like it's good doesn't. I mean, that's, so I'm so glad you brought that up, and whatever decisions we make regarding facilities, does it further education? Are our kids gonna be able to learn better? Because if not, what the heck are we doing? So I'm encouraged, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, you know, somebody's got to do, we've got to do something, but it's all of our responsibility. It's just not our responsibility.
our responsibility is, to me, is to make sure that any monies that's generated is generated and put into the right formula to make it work. Because to me, that's all we've got to give, is our time and our, the monies to make sure that the right materials are getting to these kids too. And I don't feel like, this is another rant I have too, I'm sorry, is books. Where's the books? We've got teachers out here teaching with no books. I don't understand that. Even though you might have that computer or that phone, that's not the same as a book. You know, I don't get that either. But like I said, I'm old, so you know, I know class is different than what it was when my children were growing up. I know that. But when a teacher asks for books, because I was in a meeting that they asked for books last year and didn't get them. And I don't understand why. You know, even if you have to take some funding from somewhere, why are there not, he asked for books and he didn't get any? Or he asked for books and it came through the special ed department or a special department. You know, it's just, things are not the same. And in ways that's good, but in ways it's not so good. I'm sorry, Dana, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
So, I appreciate what you guys are sharing. I just wanted to reiterate the larger goal of facility planning is thinking about how we're optimizing long-term. And I came back to this district in 2011. I really didn't understand much of the reality. I was 30 years old, really, to be frank, was grateful to be able to give back to the community that took care of me. And it didn't matter what that looked like at that time. I think when Thomas Nelson opened in 2012, Nelson County High School transitioned to about 750, 800 kids over the next 2 years. Thomas Nelson's around 650, 700. The district wasn't ready for a split at that time in terms of the foundations, right? But the truth is, the foundations of that are still resting in. It took us years to see this. It shouldn't have. The lack of foundational programs rest right in our middle schools. And they have rested there for 50 years. And no one has talked about it because no one wanted to be in the situation that our board's been put in for the last 2 years. And myself in particular for the last 20 months. And we've been talking about that because it's been really, ever since I've been here, I've never seen our elementary schools and middle schools in a sense optimally organized to do the things where we're talking about providing resources to teachers and providing access to students across the district. The reality is in New Haven and Boston, it's not even close to what they're getting at OKH and Bloomfield. And it's, to be as a professional, to be able to speak that out and talk about that over the last 20 months and to be attacked for that, to be frank, it's insulting. And the reality for us as a board is we have to tell the truth and we have to come to terms with a system that is totally not optimized for success and hasn't been for some time. Can we increase academic achievement in the current structure? Absolutely we can. We can do that. And our teachers are working very diligently and our principals are working very diligently. You're going to see that continue to grow. And we can do great things in our current structure, but we're not going to be financially sustainable. And our teacher retention will not be where it needs to be. And human resources in education are only going to get more uniquely challenged over the next 10 years. We can't ignore that while we sit and complain about the realities of our schools, because all of these things that we're talking about here, human resources, teacher professional growth, student opportunities, are tied to facility planning as along with academic achievement. We need a reset in our system, and that's obvious to anybody that's internal that's been paying attention. So I appreciate you guys engaging in the conversation. It's my job to continue to tell the truth, and I will work to do so.
I think talking to the people in the buildings is where you really find out where the needs are. I've learned more not that I've always talked to the Boston people, but just talking to the educators in the other buildings and what's going on, I can speculate from an outsider all day long. But until you talk to the people that are doing the work, That's where the truth is.
So here's where I will tag into something there, and I was looking around, I don't see Ms. Clark. I think it's Ms. Kugel, am I saying that right? I'm looking, okay, so I'm seeing the head shake, correct. I think a science teacher at New Haven, so I'm still in the right area now, okay. So, at the middle school level, and you know, I think one thing that we've got to make sure that we keep a focus on is where are things potentially broken? Where can things get better? And honestly, this concept of, I think you kind of alluded to it, you know, I call it analysis paralysis or kicking the can down the road, which sometimes that's the easy thing to do. And, you know, this is a conversation that in this very room, whenever Mr. Pate was still on the board from Boston, and I believe Mr. Hall was still on the board from New Haven. And we were talking about academic scores. And it seemed like every year as scores came out, we continued to talk about them. And we would sit there, and we'd look at them, we'd go, yeah, okay, there's a problem. And we'd move on. And the way that we moved on is we kept doing things the exact same way. And as I've started to listen a little bit more and reflect on it, and going back to the Miss Kugel comment I made a little bit ago, whenever she shared that she was the only science teacher at New Haven, that's a problem. And it's not a problem that New Haven has made. It's a problem that's based upon numbers. And it really is, it's middle school numbers. As a middle school math teacher, I always had the luxury, I had a counterpart that also taught middle school math. In fact, in some schools I taught, I had multiple counterparts. You know, if we both taught middle school math, I had someone I could go to and talk with and collaborate with and rely upon and throw ideas at, or say, it's not getting across to them, what am I missing, or how can I make it better, or hey, I like that, do you want to team up? And honestly, I feel sorry for some of our teachers like Ms. Kugel, that they are it. They are the only teacher in that middle school when it comes to science. And the same thing when it comes to the math teacher or the reading teacher. And then that teacher is also expected to try, going back to what you said, Ms. Berry, about, you know, teachers that would stay after hours. And times have changed. We all recognize that. The pandemic actually caused a lot of educators to do some self-reflection upon what their value is in society. Some of that because of the way we as society treated those teachers and talked about them. But, you know, can we expect a Ms. Kugel to also be the academic team coach and coach softball and maybe be the STLP coach? And
But we do.
But we do. And really what that comes down to is that comes down to a term that we use a lot of times. It's efficiency. And
Is it efficient?
no, that's the point there. And honestly, it's a challenge that we've had as a county school district for more than just 20 months, more than just since Mr. Pate and Mr. Hall were on the board. This is a challenge that's been going on for 30 plus years. You know, probably the right thing to have done, and this is, you know, always hindsight's 20/20, right? Probably the right thing to have done whenever there was conversations 30-ish years ago about replacing the Boston school was to ask, replacing one square building with another square building, is it the right thing to do? Maybe it was at the time, maybe not, I don't know. I mean, there were conversations the board had at that time. You know, whenever the decision was made for there to be a K-8 school at New Haven, a K-8 school at Boston, and an elementary school and a separate middle school at Bloomfield, should there have been a different discussion that was going on at that time? I don't know. I mean, I can't look back on 25 years ago and what the board was saying at that time. But our reality is what we've got now, and what we're faced with now as a community. And that is, as we've all said, we've got New Haven students that do not have the same opportunities as other students. We've got Boston students In fact, the two schools that often we will say have very similar opportunities, OKH and Bloomfield Middle School, even have different opportunities. Now, does it mean that every middle school has to have the same exact courses, the same exact extracurriculars? No, I mean, part of that's driven by what that student body has an interest in. Same thing with the two high schools. You know, whenever the decision was made 15 to 20 years ago by the sitting board at that time to have two high schools and to have two smaller learning communities. We talked a lot about equity. Oh yeah, it's going to be the same, it's going to be equal facilities, it's going to be the same courses. No, I mean, if we all thought that that was the case, we were all blind to that, because it's driven by what those student bodies and what those teachers bring to the table. But at the same time, they both have great variety of opportunities that are kind of on par with each other. You know, yeah, maybe one of them's got a better this athletic team, and another one's got a better this science, you know, collab that's going on, or FFA, or whatever it might be. But there is definitely a big disparity whenever it comes to middle school, and that's what everything at our high schools ends up being built upon. I'm going to give some gratitude right now. Mr. Peak, I saw the post on social media about trying to pull together the middle school student athletes who had an interest in athletics, who were aligned to eventually go to high school at Thomas Nelson High School. Big high five, kudos to you. Because you're there, you're trying to build something upon a larger middle school base. That way then as they get to that high school, not only is it success with athletics, but success with those students, period. Academics. They know each other. They know you. I guarantee you those sixth graders know who Mr. Peak is now. If they didn't the day before yesterday, they do now. Because they're like, oh, this is the guy I'm on. This is the guy we're supposed to be reaching out to if we have an interest in this. And so a big part of our conversation, I think, over the next few months, just like it's been over the last 20 months, has to be focused on what is the right thing to do for middle school.
Obviously, we needed to look at redistricting, and that would have an effect on middle schools. It should have happened years ago.
Yep.
And I do think the middle school conversation has to happen, and it's going to involve some sort of change. But that's a conversation that there's a lot of ways that could go, and I think those are things we have to weigh. I think there's an obvious solution to our high school problem. I think there's an obvious one in terms of one high school, in terms of equity, in terms of transportation, in terms of getting everybody here to be able to equally access the ATC. That is an easier answer. The middle school, you know, they're both important, but that one is a little more involved and probably deserves a whole lot more thought. I don't know what the other option is in terms of two high schools. I don't think we're giving our children the opportunity that they deserve, the access to the classes. I mean, we're catching ourselves coming and going, trying to get this kid to that thing. We could do it at one campus. And I would like to see, even if we can't answer all the questions right now, maybe we could answer some and put focus in that and work toward community conversations or whatever data needs to be gathered to determine how to fix the middle school. I mean, it needs to be fixed, there's no question.
So my question goes back to the last 20 months that we've been having that conversation. So the LPC was driven to look at the data for those needs and for actually looking at all the actual options. And the board decided in 2021, I think 21, to take their recommendation and pass that recommendation. So the question is, are we going to take those 19 people, I think 16 voted in favor of looking at the community campus as an option? Are we going to ignore that? That's a true, honest question here, and I know it's probably not up for debate tonight because that's a bigger question, but is that basically what we're saying as a board? Because that's going to take a lot of conversation, because we're telling 19 people that were made up by the educators, the community members, parents, that what they looked at and what they gave their best recommendation on and what they felt would meet the needs of all of our students isn't good enough or isn't what we want as a board. Because I think, again, it goes back to a bigger conversation here that can't necessarily be had in in one meeting, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what you're talking about is that honoring what their recommendations were, but it's not something that easily can be just looked at, go at one time and go,
Right, I mean, we're not just gonna take that off the table. I mean, those people put time and energy. I was part of that. You know, we put energy into that, and we looked at the data, and we looked at all the conversations. And again, a lot of our personal experiences came into that to what we think. And I will say, in 2015, when this board, not this board, but a board, put in front of Boston and New Haven to combine, I was one of the biggest advocates to say that is not gonna happen. But guess what? My daughter entered 6th grade the following year, and by golly, I changed my mind. Because right when she switched from 5th to 6th, and I love Boston with all my heart, she got nothing but math and science and English with one teacher. So if we would have had a problem, and I know everyone in this room can say you had that one teacher that you connected with, but I bet you had one you didn't. And that one you didn't, you got to move. You got to move from class to class because they couldn't meet your needs. Not at Boston, not at New Haven. That's the teacher you got. And if that doesn't work out, then too bad. Now, we got lucky, and we have great teachers at Boston. And I can bet we have great teachers at New Haven.
Your comment about 2015, so I'll take that one, because that was my comment about in this very room whenever Mr. Hall and Mr. Paper still
Oh,
part
we
of
were
this
fighting.
board.
We were fighting mad.
That's where I posed the question. We're still gonna keep doing the exact same thing, expect it to be a little bit different? It's not gonna happen. We need to start throwing different ideas up on the wall, see which ones stick. For example, and that's an example that I threw up, that's something that needs to be discussed. Of course, that was then taken out of context to mean, oh, it's going to combine those two schools, or oh, they're going to turn one school into elementary, one into middle. No, it's to start that conversation,
Right.
just like the past 20 months has been that conversation.
So again, I want us as a board to really reflect on what we're saying here and be able to have open, honest conversation about what it is we're gonna do as a board now. Because it is a different board. And, you know, there are different ideas and there's different opinions at the table. And we have to honor and respect that. But I think we also have to honor and respect the people that were part of that LPC and what they brought to the table.
And to me, what they brought to the table wasn't, because I attended those meetings, and what they brought to the table, to me, did not make a lot of sense as far as the age of students going to put a 6th grader in with a 12th grader. No.
Now, Diana.
No, let me have my say. It's what goes on inside the building, not the building itself. When Nelson County was split, I didn't understand why it was split, because we were told, public was told something totally different. When I would come to board meetings, they would say, well, the size of the school, or the size, smaller classes were better, okay? Granted, smaller classes are better. But now we're to the point where we have empty hallways, empty classrooms. We've got chemistry not being taught at a school. You said yourself yours had to take it online, okay? That's unnecessary to me. What college do you know that'll open up especially if you're going to be in a medical, and open up your record and say, you didn't get chemistry? What kind of school did you go to? My daughter was asked that in college. What high school did you go to that you didn't have advanced math? Okay? There was 3 of them in her classroom in college at E-Town that they said the same thing. You went to Nelson County, didn't you? Well, yeah, they knew she went to Nelson County. They said, well, do you realize you use that phone too much? You use that calculator too much? They didn't teach you anything? That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing for our children. That's embarrassing. When you've got school with empty classrooms, to me, why not make the best use of what we can do to make sure our kids learn the classes or meet the classes that they're supposed to meet. It just doesn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me years ago what happened, and it certainly doesn't make sense to me now. And I admire those people for going to, going to PLC. There's nothing wrong with that. But I remember sitting here for years with a PLC that we didn't do jack about. There wasn't anything done, and
You mean LPC?
I'm sorry, LPC, that nothing was done, especially at New Haven. Now, I've sat here with it. I've sat here with it every 2 to 3 years. And they would say, well, now we need to do this, this, and this. You know, what you need to do and what you have to do is two different things to me. And people don't like, people don't like it. But like you said, this is a new board. This is a different board. And I see things differently than I did 18 months ago. That's, we've lost kids, or some of the kids have to go to E-Town to take a class. You have to pay money. I just have a problem with it. I think we need to offer our kids as much as we can offer, and we're not.
So the question goes back to, how do we do that?
Well, to me, it probably is not as simple as I wish it would be, yeah, but that is the start not from scratch, but to start the first thing is just like Amanda said. You put the high school together, and that's step one. Step two, then you figure out what you're going to do with the middle school. And it may take a few months. It certainly will.
How do you move the high school students without thinking about the middle school students?
Because you
when
have
we
to.
talk-
You're talking about different kids.
But when this conversation started, our biggest inequities, again, talk to the people in the buildings. Our biggest inequities are in our middle schools, not our high schools. I'm not saying.
Yeah,
that
there
there
is
aren't.
inequities in high
I'm not
school too.
saying that there are not
Yeah.
differences in our high schools.
Oh, there's big differences.
Not saying that.
We have 2 half-full schools, that's why you say one like
Whoa,
that.
whoa.
So it's obvious this is a very complicated conversation that probably won't be able to be,
Whoa.
it's obvious this is a very complicated conversation that, even though all this discussion is good, there's no answer that's going to come out of this tonight. But it's a good
Start.
it's a good jumping point for us to continue to focus in on what are the challenges that have been identified that somehow we've got to do something with. We can't just keep analysis paralysis. We cannot just keep saying, well, let's just leave everything the same, because then we can focus on something different and it will make it all better, because we realize it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Because you're talking about how New Haven's been on the facility plan for decades. It was on there in the 90s. There were boards in the 90s that looked at that and said, kick the can. And it was for various reasons. It was because maybe student enrollment numbers, maybe it was because of bonding capacity. It's not something that was just like, oh, well, let's just ignore New Haven. So, I would suggest that, all this is good discussion, but again, we're not going to come to an answer or to a decision or even to a place where we can say, okay, well, the next steps are. So, I don't know whether it's that we should go on into the next item on the agenda or.
Yes, let's go into the next one. Thank you. Lively discussion. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Well, no, as Mrs. Norman told me, the meetings were going to be shorter when you started.
I bet he didn't say that.
Okay, our next item is, let me put my glasses on. Well, I can see one coming up. Needs assessment data review process. Courtney Newton and Camina Henderson. Welcome. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you.
I'm Teresa Henderson, for those who I haven't really properly been introduced to yet, but I'm coming for you guys. I'm preschool through 5th grade Next Generation Learning. And I'm Courtney Newton, for those of you who haven't met me yet, and I am working with the 6-12 schools. So tonight, we are actually piggybacking off of your conversation, where we are celebrating our teachers and their voices and the work that they are doing within the schools. And what we were able to do is look at how, you're okay? Is that you? Are you clicking? What we wanted to look at is how we are unifying ourselves through our language and our designs and how we've been doing that. So going from our individual classrooms, unifying our strategies, going through our learning design labs, which are PLCs, to a collective success.
So in December, we did a teacher needs process, and that was twofold. And we did a Google form. We also did kind of some things that you can see in this picture here to get more information, more layers from that. And our purpose behind that needs assessment was to really start to look at teacher voice, teacher perspective, gather intelligence from the teachers relating to support that they need, and also think about identifying professional growth and instructional priorities so we can start to make strategic plans around supports for teachers and also maybe some future budgetary implications for that. So tonight really is just an introduction to the needs assessment process that we utilized. We're going to be revisiting this over the next 3 months so you can kind of see how that plays out. As it does have future implications on strategic decisions that you will be involved in as a board. And I know that our schools are continuing to dig into some of that data as well. We've got a couple of principals here. So they've been working with their teams too to think about the needs assessment data and how that plays out over the next couple of months. So I think one thing to capture is, when we did the needs assessment process with teachers in December, that wasn't the first time that we were working with teachers in the building, but we've been there every 3 weeks. Teresa's been working with P5, all the elementary schools and the preschool, and I've been working with the middle schools and high school. So we're there every 3 weeks thinking about instructional design, instructional practices, curriculum, etc. So December was just that point where we're like, okay, this is where we're at, and now let's see, okay, where do we need to stop? Make some decisions, give teacher feedback on how we need to move forward. Some of that's resources, but some of it also is, okay, what does this next semester need to look like with design labs, which is what we call on those meetings, kind of like PLCs, if you're familiar with that term.
So the first thing that we did was a Google form, and we used the Gallup engagement questions. And so these are the 9 questions that got sent out to every single teacher. And so what we did is when we met in our small groups, our PLCs, our learning design labs, we had them fill out the Google form first. And so they were able to take some time to reflect on these, and then we were following it up with further conversation. So from that, we had 242 teachers respond. So we have 270 teachers, so it's a 90% response rate. And from that response rate, this is just a synopsis of one of the questions, but we had 80 to 85% positive engagement. So this is one thing to really celebrate from our teachers through the last couple of years of their experiences in schools, how it's changed through the pandemic, etc. What's came from that is that their willingness to still be engaged in the work, dedicated to our kids, dedicated to each other. So this is, I have strong relationships with others within my school community. And then the second step that we took after the Google Forms was the small group discussions. So we had these big posters all over the room, and we had these questions in a pamphlet. And what we asked them to do is to go through and thoughtfully think through the lens of people. What professional learning and collaboration opportunities will help you create a vibrant learning experience for your students? So they're writing on their stickies, and as you can see, this is New Haven. They're posting up their stickies, and so we did that for each PLC throughout the day when we're there for 3-week cycles, and we were able to collect data in all 3 of these categories while we were there.
So through the Google form and also through some of those more, in-depth descriptions that we got from the Post-it notes and also conversation that happened at each of those stations, these are some themes that came out of that. And we did look at that data, not just at a district level, but the principals can attest to this. We were in there with their leadership teams. Okay, what does this look like? What are themes that you're seeing, some trends that you're seeing, and what follow-up conversations do we need to have around these 3 themes here. So those 3 themes being time together. Teachers are wanting more time to work professionally with their colleagues, looking at instructional resources, and not just like, oh, here's a resource, but what's the best resource? What are some resources we can unite around? and then customized support. So if I teach this content or I have this need, this is something that I want to learn more about as a teacher, how can I get that individualized support so I can grow as a professional? So those are the three themes that emerged from the needs assessment process that we did in December. And the next slides here have some more detail around those three themes. So again, one of the huge ones, I would say this is probably the most predominant thing that came out in the gallery walk part of it, which is where they were talking and digging in and having conversation, was they wanted more time with each other, and they wanted that time to be kind of reserved for them to really dig deeply. And not just with each other in the school building, but they wanted to have collaboration time with other teachers in other school buildings, and even think about, from a 6-12 perspective, middle school and high school, how do we connect those conversations? If I'm a middle school teacher, how can I make sure that I'm teaching to where it feeds right into what the high school teachers are teaching, and those type of things. But also to share instructional practices and, hey, how are you approaching this? Can we share some ideas and some strategies in that way?
I just want to say, I think it's important to anyone in the room that's not an educator to know that American public education is organized uniquely to isolate people. It is not organized to allow people to collaborate. It's organized where there's always a person that is essentially in the presence of students. As you can imagine, leading and teaching students does not also align well to developing plans and diving in collaboratively. And that's a byproduct of money. It's a basic funding mechanism that's always been the case, where in American public education, generally teachers have one planning period. And that planning period, as you can imagine, if you're teaching for the other 5 hours a day, is generally used as a time to restore, regenerate, do some of the odds and ends planning, but it's hard to dive deep, and you're also by yourself still. So all this process really reiterates what we already know in a sense, is that people want more time. But time is money. And that is the thing we have to continue to evaluate. How do we provide more time for those that choose it within the context of our budget? I bring that up because in other countries, especially in countries like Japan, Finland, and some European countries, most teachers are teaching half the day and they have half the day to plan. In America, it's not like that. It's never been like that. And probably never will be fully like that unless the design of school continues to shift. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
And you said something about being able to collaborate with somebody in the 8th grade. Is that right? That I said that people know what is expected when they get to the high school, right? That's something that's not being done now.
Yes, and so that would kind of go to the second bullet point here, which is vertical and horizontal alignment of curriculum. So not to get too in the weeds of what that means, but just to make sure everybody's going in the same direction, both this way and this way with our content and instruction.
Yes.
And so that is something that we've already got some action plans set in place to start in February. And I don't know if we have space to get into all of that, but I'm happy to share those plans with you all. They're also on NC Unwrapped. You can see our 90-day plan to do curriculum mapping with our teachers at the middle high school and elementary schools too.
Are these things that you will also talk about in the challenge teams?
So yes, I think some of these things are involved in, I think, the Next Gen Professionals team. I'm looking for a camera. Yes. So this has come up as far as like professional growth. That's a topic in the Next Gen Challenge teams. And professional growth means a lot of things for teachers. Some of it is professional growth in how I plan, how I design instruction. Sometimes professional growth is I want to collaborate with my colleague. I get smarter because I work with Teresa. Right, so when I think about me not being by myself in a room doing something by myself, that's the power of that collaboration, and teachers need that, everybody needs that. So that's one of the ways that we grow is from one another.
And I know some of you are on the challenge teams for early childhood or for math and literacy, and these are the things that we are covering and showing, and even on Thursday we're going to dive into like, okay, so we said these things, so then how does that move forward to the benefits that we want to provide our students?
So the second thing that came across was high quality instructional resources. So teachers were asking for like, what are some ways that we can, we have access to a lot of resources as educators right now thanks to the World Wide Web, but like what's the most important resources? What are some things we could commit to? And what are some things that maybe aren't prescriptive, but can help to guide my instruction. So not a worksheet, but something that can help guide my instruction and plan great experiences for kids. And then the third thing was individualized professional development supports. So I guess a phrase that came up was not a one-size-fits-all, but again, if I want to grow in my content area or instructional practices that I might utilize, let's say that I do a lot of reading and writing instruction, and I want to learn some ways that you teach reading and writing instruction, that would be an example of individual professional development supports. I was at a design lab all day today at Thomas Nelson, and we had this conversation of like, what other professional development supports are there examples of besides content? It could be that you're trying to focus on questioning strategies, inquiry, how to design assessments. All those are examples of individualized supports that a teacher might be asking for depending on what their growth goals are. So teachers are asking for how to get connected in there. I think what we've found through some of these needs that have popped up is, there is funding to support these things. There are resources, but maybe the teachers didn't know, like, oh, things are back in person now as far as professional learning, because the past 2 years it's either been not happening or it's been virtual. And so they're like, okay, things are happening again. We can connect with one another again through our co-ops like CKEC or GREC, et cetera. So some of this is just in making teachers aware of how to access some of the resources they already have. And some of it's been really great conversation, digging in a little bit deeper to these top three themes that were shared in design labs today. When I was at Thomas Nelson, they'll be shared at Nelson County tomorrow. But like, what else does this look like for us to kind of dig deeper in this?
One of the things that we were discussing at Foster Heights today while I was there is when we're starting to build these data models, right? And so we're understanding that students are assessed, but what are we really doing with that data? And that's what's really important, right? We have to make sure that we are looking at the data to inform our instruction. Well, if you have the correct data and you can see it, well, then you can know where a teacher might need some extra support or development. And so from an admin's perspective or from a teacher's perspective of reflecting back on, maybe it's on a strategy or maybe it's on a particular practice, etc., they're able to tailor their learning or the professional development where they need it for their students.
So the key point is you guys are also going back in this next cycle and getting more in depth into these constraints that have been provided. So these three themes, they're diving back into that. Also, one thing we need to work on is we need to make it easier for teachers to spend money. The bureaucracy and the nature of the way government occurs makes it difficult for Ms. Newton to spend money. It's difficult, and Jessica's understanding home money. They have rules because there's no ways, right? So what that actually creates is it's very difficult to spend money. And it's something we have to study and make easier. It's hard for people across all forms of government to spend money, especially teachers being empowered to do that quickly. They're used to going to Amazon and having one click. Here, it's a 10 to 15 minute process oftentimes, and we have to continue to study that. And we're probably as efficient as anybody in the state in terms of bookkeeping. Still difficult, anyways.
It would be nice if they didn't have to spend their own money.
And there's some ways we have to work to make that happen, but it's still very complex. And Jessica's up here right now, she's thinking, oh, this is going to be better.
We'll talk.
One thing I was going to say is sometimes they just need to ask.
And that came off at the conversation today when we were digging a little bit deeper with a teacher. A teacher said, well, when I first started teaching, I didn't even know what I needed yet. So I was given this budget, but until I got into it, then I said, oh, I needed this instead. Or I need this resource now that we're doing this project. So sometimes teachers don't know until they really dig into it or a new opportunity pops up and more needs pop up as well. I will say the purchasing process has improved a lot from 10 years ago when I first doing that. It used to be all paper-based, and it was a very intensive process. But there's still a lot of rules even to understand. Some teachers are like, well, what can I spend this on and what can't I spend it on? And you all will get very intimate with those rules as well. There's all kinds of things that teachers have to be aware of just to even get the supplies to do what they need to do in the classroom.
And sometimes it's just easier to spend your own money.
Yeah. To go to Dollar General and get the thing that you're going to use for the next day.
And then you don't realize $500 later, you've spent $500. So,
And that goes again for collaboration with other teachers. of the same subject.
It would be helpful in that.
And that way, yes, yes, they could share, yeah, I've got this, or I'll order this, we'll order that, and we'll make it work.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And as Mr. Bradley said, we are going back into our Learning Design Labs this cycle, and reiterating and asking those questions and showing the data to the teachers too, so they can see the survey data that came through, and then also reflecting on those needs assessments that came through their stickies, and what are the steps moving forward for their school locally. But we're also uniting through our community challenge teams, as you guys brought up as well, and our student challenge teams. So having a voice from all perspectives, not just our teachers, but our community members and our students as well. And so again, this is just the introduction to our needs assessment tonight, and over the next couple of months, we're going to dive deeper into these things and hopefully help you guys utilize priorities for budgetary needs coming up.
So this will be on the agenda the next 3 months as we get further to talk about if we want to do this. Here are some options. Here's the money that would be attached to that. Here's what would need to be reallocated.
I will say, as you know, being in design labs or the PLC work that Teresa and I have been doing is probably the favorite part of my job right now. And if you all could hear the conversations that teachers are engaged in around increasing student achievement, you know, designing assessments that work for kids, instructional practices, making each other better, and doing this all for kids, you all would know that our teachers are really energized and they're really focused. And if you really think about everything that they've been through over the past 2 years, and that they're here now and they're focused and they're ready to get down to work, they're rolling up their sleeves, the principals are doing the same thing, I think you all would be really proud of people in our district.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, ladies, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Proceeding with the next item is our board calendar and celebrations. And again, board calendar, Superintendent Bradley.
So no action required at this time unless the board wants to take action. Currently, we're scheduled for next Tuesday at the Academy for our regularly scheduled board meeting in January. The meeting to follow that is currently scheduled for February 21st. We put the February 24th, 25th, 26th because it is KSBA. And so just some context there, those dates are in theory not regularly scheduled. So that's.
Yeah, the next meeting will be at the Academy then next Tuesday at 5:30.
Yes.
Okay.
If in theory, we feel like, we have to, the room's not quite as big as this, we could move over here if we felt like we needed to, we'll get a better pulse on it before that time.
Okay, thank you. Next item will be our board celebrations. I said board chair here. I assume each of us, we've done this in previous meetings, that we find items or we have something that we celebrate, beginning with Mr. Norman. Do you have anything you want to celebrate?
Yes, I do. I pretty much spent today at New Haven School today and talked to some and talked to kids, Department of Education, and really look forward to some positive things happening down there and doing what's best for these kids in New Haven. And just feel really good. Come out feeling good. I've not up at Wade in a while. So yeah, I just want to give some kudos and praise to New Haven School. I know they're working hard and had a tough time here lately, so we need to thank them for their hard work.
Okay. Mr. Dowdy?
Well, I've already given a little bit of gratitude there to Mr. Peak. I like to say I appreciate what you're trying to build there. I'll also say, and I don't see Ms. Perryman here tonight, I want a little bit of gratitude towards her as well, because I think what we're starting to see with the the area technology center, the students, and the connections that they're making with some of our business partners. You know, you've probably heard me say this many times, Ms. Berry. I mean, I think the ATC really is one of the hidden gems that we've got here within the Nelson County Schools. I saw Ms. Newton there on one of the earlier slides, which, by the way, the host of folks are doing a fundraiser, and they are doing something with Krispy Kreme donuts, which, there's a little bit of a kind of a irony there. HOSA, Krispy Kreme donuts, Hell donuts, but we definitely need to help them out. And I know Mr. Mattingly has done it before with, not the donut piece, but I know that coming up soon is going to be, she will need people to volunteer for sticks, yes, for her students, because I think they have to get 30 sticks before they can sit for the test. So if you've got 2 good arms, you can give 2 good sticks in one day. But I think that's
donuts that I am the blood.
But again, my point there is that I think that we do have this hidden gem with the Area Technology Center. We've all seen it. We're starting to see it more. I am thrilled by what I am seeing coming out of Ms. Berryman and the staff that are working so hard there. And I do kind of have a soft spot for the HOSA piece simply because of the sticks and the blood and trying to help students with that dream that they have. So.
Okay, thank you. Stephen?
Well, David was kind enough to invite me when he went to New Haven today, and I hadn't been there in 20 years probably. I've been in the gym, but I haven't been inside the school. And talking to the architect, it's exciting, the plans, and the school hadn't changed in 20 years since I've been there. But the possibility that is not always going to be the case, so I just enjoy that opportunity. So I'm looking forward to starting.
Great.
Well, I have a couple things. I'm going to start off with one. Most of you guys are probably aware that Boston lost a student back in November. And I want to share gratitude for the people from central office. They stepped into high gear and took care of the people at Boston, and I'm grateful for that. Mainly because I think they were in such need of it, and also just the fact that I think they were a little surprised about how much love you guys gave them, and again, I'm thankful for that. The other thing is, I don't know if you don't have students in the school, Boston is, I guess, the pilot program for I think we voted on this almost a year ago. I want to say it was at Thomas Nelson in the spring for the little card that the kids will swipe on the bus so parents will be able to track where their kid is. They'll be able to use these for getting their cafeteria food. So it's a really good security thing that I think we've added that I'm excited to see how it works for our students. As long as they can keep up with the card. That will be the challenge. And I want to say something that Ms. Bunch brought up about not being able to respond to guest comments. Trust me, it is so difficult not to address those. So I am 100% on board for us to have a moment where we can address not everything that's said in guest comments, but maybe if we can pick out 1 or 2 things, and that's something we can talk about when we are at our board retreat. Because you're right, there are moments where we need to respond to those, and we may not have it on the agenda that we can sort of bring that conversation, like I said, maybe not in detail, but just so that it doesn't just leave you hanging. And everyone should know that every board member here on this panel is approachable, that you should be able to walk up to any one of us and have a conversation if you've got a question. No one here, and no one before this board, could not be approached.
So I really thank you for that, because I really hope what will come from that is that more of the public will feel like their voice will be heard, because I feel like you would have a lot more public input that would help you all make your jobs a lot easier and decisions a lot easier if they felt like they were being heard. But, and you know, like you're right, you're in a point where you can't just start going on a tangent and talking about things, but just a little bit of time to say, I heard you, makes a difference no matter what position.
And like I said, you should know by now, at least these three, and I'm pretty sure David and Amanda will talk as well, but I know the three of us, you probably can't shut us up more than anything. So it's always welcome conversation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's basically it for me. Sorry, I got a little emotional here, but I am very grateful
okay.
for what you guys did for my Boston people. They appreciate it.
But that's what we're here for, really. I want to say that I thank everyone for coming, first of all. If we had this kind of crowd every month, it would be a thrill. Because then you people would get the word out, what we've been discussing or what we've done. I appreciate this board, and I think we can have, I know Tracy and I have had conversations and you get emotional, but that's what it is, it's a conversation. And I'm thankful that we can have the conversation and that's it, you know. I still like her. We just, some days more than others maybe, but no, I appreciate what we do for our community, and I appreciate the years that you have put in, Damon, and I appreciate the years that you have put in. And hopefully, David and Amanda, you'll find it very rewarding. I really do, because I think we're in a place right now where we can make great change for the best, for the better, and I'm looking forward to it. So I thank everyone for that. Okay, with that being said, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned.